Welcome back to Game Devs Play Games, where we play games and talk game design. We're back with more Civ VI.
Alright, so, I forgot the settlers, and there's a scout right there, and, so normally if I would, try to move back, the blue line right here, if you can see it, shows where you can move. That's a nice a lot of little interface fixes they did. It takes 3 or more turns to move across the river, so I'm going to do this, because if that scout moves on him, he will take my settler, and I will be very sad, because I will have to go find the settler, or find the guy, kill him, take the settler. It would be a pain. It's just the worst. So that's happening. By the way, I probably wouldn't have built a monument, just not my style. I'd probably be already working on my second settler by now. I like cities.
I mean, that's pretty fair. Cities are pretty significant.
They determine everything.
Yeah.
They really do. It kind of, you need them. So you get these little information blurbs on the side, which is really nice. This is saying that if I give the city-state a trade route, then I will get another envoy with them, which is really nice, because we explained what envoys did before. And that's cool. Anyway, so there's a few things that the game has done that kind of blew my mind and made me think differently about some aspects of systems design. And that was the idea of what an early game character means in the long run. In Civ V, when you played an early game Civ like Cleopatra, or not Cleopatra, I think it was Ramses, but like Egypt and other early game Civs, basically you wanted to win early. Or you wanted to try to build like wonders early or something like that. That
makes sense.
But then you would
trying to end the game
really
as quickly as possibly.
Yeah. And if you didn't do that, you're at a huge disadvantage. That is not what it necessarily translates to in this game. When I played Montezuma, it opened my mind, and it was a simple little thing, but it's a big deal. He has... Here, we can actually look him up. Montezuma. So Montezuma, he gets... Look at him. Look at that face. All of his luxury resources, normally they will give you an amenity for your first 4 cities. His, every luxury resource gives him an amenity for the first 6 cities you build.
Wow.
So right then and there, it's saying you should build a lot of cities.
Yeah.
And then... on top of that, he has his very first unit is Eagle Warrior, and it replaces the regular warrior, and it's stronger than a regular warrior. And on top of that, whenever it captures whenever it captures a enemy civilization thing, it makes a builder. In addition to that, so you make a lot of builders. You're gonna be able to war your way into builders, and with that you can improve your tiles on your cities more. In addition to that, he can spend builder charges to immediately give 20% production toward districts. So not only is he improving tiles, but he's using those builders to work on his districts, which we talked about, the campus, being able to work on science and things like that. And then finally, there was one other bonus that he had. What was it? He has an additional building, or not additional, he has a special building that generates him more amenities, plus it gives him a great general point per building that he has of the Tlachtli, which is a ball court.
Gotcha.
It's one of the old Aztec ball courts. So basically how he plays is that you spread like wildfire, you conquer everybody around you, that you can. You try to make a lot of cities because you can afford it better than everybody else can, and then your people are still happier than everybody else in doing so. And it's really crazy, because what that means is he spreads early, and then all of your benefits seem like they're gone later in the game. But what you don't realize is now you have
a head start.
In the game I'm playing right now, which is near the end now, I have 10 cities. And I'm about to finish conquering Greece, and that will get me up to 14 cities on one continent. 14 cities! That is absolutely insane, and I'll be fine.
So basically, it just has strong late-game benefits because it gives you that initial push.
Exactly. If you have 14 cities, that means I can build 14 campuses.
That's nuts.
If I can build 14 campuses, you know how much science I'll generate? It's out of control. So all of a sudden, he becomes a late-game Civ because he was an early-game Civ.
That's actually, I think that's genius, because one of the most dissatisfying things about a lot of games like this, and it's even one of the reasons why don't get me wrong, I like StarCraft also, but one of the reasons why I always had a hard time playing against other people is that there's a lot of really strong early game strategies to just win the game in the first, X amount of turns or
Yes.
X amount of minutes. And I feel like you don't get to really see what the game has to offer because of that.
You miss out on a whole lot.
Yeah. And so building the design around that mentality of letting the early game actually benefit the late game with Montezuma, that's such a wonderful idea, because it allows you to still explore the entirety of the game.
Absolutely.
And it still caters to that play style, which is even better.
It's it's like, oh man, I would love to have conquered everybody, which is what happened. I was like, oh man, I'm separated on this continent by myself. I took out the two people next to me because they declared war on me for some reason, and then Greece is left over, and I'm like, I'll leave you alone for now. Then once I conquered them, I'm there now, and I'm like, well, the early game's over. My advantage is gone, but at least now I have this huge head start. So yeah, I didn't accomplish my first goal, but I can move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's cool. That actually makes me really happy, and that much more likely to want to buy Civ for myself.
Right? It's crazy. So there was like one last huge thing I wanted to talk about. All right, so in strategy games, if there's not an X factor in the game can become unfortunately predetermined. Mm-hmm. And the only games that really trump it are Go and chess. Right? It's a strategy game, and all there is a turn order. There is no X factor.
It's just player choice that really changes everything.
Exactly.
Which I guess in a way is the X factor, but
and that's the thing. You can never determine exactly what your opponent's going to do, but you can narrow it down. And so when you're playing a game of chess or Go or stuff like that, and it's top tier players, they say whoever goes first has like a 1% advantage, like a likely chance of winning, because that's what how big of a deal first turn advantage is. In Civ, everybody goes at the same time until you go to war, and then it changes up. I just like totally crush this guy. I'm gonna back off. Anyway, So you have, when it's a strategy game, if there's no X factor, you kind of have an issue on your hands in that. There become certain optimal strategies. What are you trying to tell me? Barbarians have spotted your city.
Oh, it's kind of nice that they tell you that, though.
It is really nice. So, Kapow, they're in an escort formation, so now I can actually guide this settler up here, because he was in danger before. By the way, I used money to just buy a warrior, because...
Oh, I missed that.
So in Civ, they have X factors all over the place, random variables that you have no control over whatsoever, but there's a lot of control the player has at the same time. And there's so many random variables and so many determined variables by the player that they mesh together and they make this beautiful concoction we see in front of us. The things that the player can choose are what kind of Civ they're going to play, what they build out of their city, where their units move around, what kind of policies they use, what kind of tech they produce. They pretty much have control over almost everything they want to do, except for a few things. Number one, can't control barbarians. We talked about how they were the X factor before. Can't control barbarians. Barbarians attacking you. You got to build a military unit. Yeah, military units aren't good for economic production, but unless you're Montezuma, but they, you need them in order to live, and that's fine. Man, see, like this encampment's gonna be a pain in my ass, especially once I build my city here.
Another X factor is just the world
and
itself.
That's the thing. The map, the world is the biggest one of all.
It changes everything
what my
else.
City was like. The game determined it ahead of time, and so there's that. There's the city-states around you. The other civs are the big one. And then after that, those are the main 4 X factors. And it all determines on what the world is like and the people around you. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And that is all that's a lot of variables in it, but you have no control over it. You only work with it. And that's why Civ is amazing. Civ is not a game about doing. Civ is a game about adapting.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. Because if you go in with the exact same strategy every single time, you're going to have mixed results.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, at least for it. In a weird way, I think it plays to the strengths of Civ being a video game and not a board game.
Oh, that'd be too much.
Yeah, there'd be too many variables, too many numbers to manage, and just even the random variables themselves, excluding all of the set ones, it would still be too much to manage.
It would be, there would be a lot. And I know you could probably try to make a dumbed down version of it, but...
Well, there is a Civ board game. I've never played it.
There is, isn't there? I don't think I'd want to play that.
It just, I feel like it just wouldn't feel right, you know? I mean, I'm sure the design still holds. But I mean, Civ through the iterations, I feel like it's become such a beast that it's, I don't know, taking away all of these interesting things, it kind of removes what makes it so special.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just those realizations between the idea of an early game Civ actually really turning into a late game Civ, or a character, or of any game. Mm-hmm. The idea of the X factor being the board around you, and then you have to adapt to it. The adaptation is really what makes Civ amazing. It's why every game can feel unique, because you can't control everything. One tile misplaced here can change the fate of the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, that adds a lot to the replayability of Civ, too.
Oh, it's incredible. Ooh, all right.
Are you just getting swarmed by barbarians now?
I'm about to be. I mean, we're going to be fine. It's going to be good.
Are you going to be fine?
I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm not too concerned.
This would be a funny way to like...
just totally get crushed by them. I'm a pro at this point. Now, that is, I will say, when you first start playing this game, Civ 5, you wouldn't have to worry about warriors or anything for a while. You're like, eh. But in this game, if you don't build a military unit early on, you'll die. Because you don't start off with walls like you did in the previous one. You can't.
I didn't know that you did in previous ones.
Yeah, well, in the previous one, you'd have some walls and you'd be able to shoot at units nearby. You'd be like, you know what, screw it, get away from my city, and you shoot at them.
Back off.
You don't get that anymore. So they can, if you're not protected, they'll just take your city out in 3 turns.
So
just like that.
That's interesting to me. So do you think that the reason for that is to sort of be like, hey players, build military units. You're gonna need it for the long run. So it's like a heavier hand in pushing the player to do that?
I think that's absolutely what it is. I think it's a balance mechanic, because before it was either you go all military or you don't. The in-between was the bad choice. In this one, it's saying you gotta go in between. You can go heavy military, but of course you'll be behind everybody who went economic.
Yeah.
But that economic person, they better build military, because otherwise they'll die to barbarians. Before, barbarians were a joke. In this game, they are not. They will mess you up.
That's such an interesting design choice, though, because you could argue, right, that they could just as easily, at the beginning of the game, say, player, we recommend you build military units, right? And players, more likely than not, maybe 80-20 chance, they would skip over it and not pay attention to any message.
And they'd be like, what the hell? Why did I just die?
Right? But say they didn't have the barbarians, right? Or they started you off with more like walls and stuff, and so barbarians weren't really a threat. So then you are later like, 60 to 80 turns into the game, and suddenly now you're attacked by another civilization and they just wipe you because you never built your military units. So I think it's smart. I think it was a smart, very engineered choice to make the barbarians a threat, because now they're attacking you on turn 27 before you've really even done much in the game. 4 episodes in.
Yeah.
When they could be a threat and they could kill you, and suddenly now your wasted time is much less severe than it could have been. So it forces the player to learn at a more rapid pace, but more intuitively, rather than through throwing text at you. So I think that's a really smart choice. I don't know if it's the best choice, but I think it's still better than what they've done in previous games.
I mean, that could actually be said for all of the 4 X factors I mentioned, because barbarians will teach you to train your military up. Other civilizations will teach you to train your tech up, because without those, you'll get outpaced, and then you'll be way behind. And when you realize that somebody else has built something you don't have, you start to panic.
And production just kind of comes naturally.
Yeah.
Because you can't do anything without it.
You can't. Production is probably more important in this game than it even was in Civ V. And then you have the map, and you want you need builders and stuff to work with the map. You need to be able to affect the terrain around you and build settlements. So it teaches you to expand and work on your economic growth. Otherwise, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And the city-states actually teach you how to work with the politics of the game. There isn't a political victory yet, like there was in the previous game, but they're working on it. They just didn't want to. They didn't know how they wanted to do it, so they held off.
Weird.
It is a little strange,
especially since the game is in full release.
Yep.
I mean, it's not uncommon for them to be updating it after release, but I feel like that's a pretty significant update for a AAA studio to make.
Yeah, it's something else.
Huh.
But yeah, we're actually more on time. So, I don't know. Last things I want to point out, information that they give to the player. Lenses, you can either click here to look at it or hit the number hotkeys to change it. So, this is a religious view. It would show me what religions have been affecting what cities.
Jeez, we could have like 5 whole episodes and just talking about the interface.
Oh, it's amazing. In most ways, there are a few things that are a little, but otherwise very good. There's like one to show you continents. There are land-attached continents, kind of like Europe and Asia are. Appeal is really not important until later on. You can look at the settler view, the governments, who has what type of governments, because if they don't have the same government as you, they don't like you, because Americans hate communism.
It's true.
You have your political view. This mostly looks at like city-states and other people like that. And then one of the most, I don't know why they don't have a hotkey for that, and then you have tourism. So you can actually take a look at what cities are getting affected by what tourists. So there's some cool lenses. You can put pins on the map and be like, hey, there's a pin right here. Look at this. See this? I'm going to add a pin. It's right here. And it says fish. You can there's a whole lot of cool interface things you can do with the game. But mostly I just want to talk about how the game blows my mind. Blows my mind. I can't even talk. That's how much it affects me. It's how passionate I am.
It is really cool, though. I'm honestly pretty impressed by Civ VI, more than I thought I would be.
It's so good. I'm just looking through things now.
Okay, well, question of the day.
What's up, Pedro?
I don't know. Question of the day. What was the main highlight of this episode?
Give me your Mercury.
Talking about random variables, X factors. So maybe we should make this a challenge of the day.
Okay.
If you were to design an X factor for this game.
One major X factor.
Yeah, and I know that's a very large design choice.
It is a pretty big one,
or question. But what would you make? Even if it's just a high level concept. I think that could be a very interesting discussion.
I think it'd be cool if aliens just showed up randomly.
Maybe ancient aliens.
So that's all we got. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us for this special edition of Civ 6 Game Does Play Games. You should vote at the top. And goodbye. It's nice talking to you.
Bye, everyone.